Welcome to our first episode of Enculturation Podcast, where we aim to spark curiosity on cultural topics. I'm your host, Katya. Today, our guest is Andy Nguyen. Andy Nguyen is an integrative nurse practitioner for pediatric and young adults living with autoimmune diseases, and a street dancer representing the artist collective Styles of Eon. He recently authored and published The Day I Woke Up Different, a story about a Vietnamese American child who discovers self-acceptance. Hey Andy, thanks for joining us today. We're glad to have you on our very first episode of Enculturation Podcast. Welcome.
Yeah. Pleasure to be here. An honor to be here. So really appreciate you all having me here on Enculturation Podcast, the very first episode. Wow.
Welcome. Can you give us a little introduction about you?
Yeah. So I am, I guess my name, Andy A. Nguyen. So I'm a nurse practitioner, been in healthcare for about like 16 years. I'm also a street dancer. Started out breaking when I was in middle school. And then, as I got older, got to different styles and kept with the dance. And then recently I became an author of a children's book called The Day I Woke Up Different. It's a story about a Vietnamese child who discovers self-acceptance.
So what are some fun facts or achievements that The Day I Woke Up Different had?
Yeah, with this book, The Day I Woke Up Different, I didn't imagine it, go as far as it did. It's now in 5 different countries. It's even, people from South Africa have even read parts of this book. But, it's in New Zealand, Germany, obviously Canada and US, and to name a few. So that's crazy to me. It's in those different parts of the world. It's been utilized in people's theses for their, there's a sociologist in New Zealand who lectured on it in her university lecture, and she wrote she used parts of it in her thesis. So we're in academia now. It's pretty
Amazing.
Dope. It's being lectured now in elementary schools in Boston and ethnic study schools and middle school ethnic studies. It's being lectured in middle school ethnic studies. Those are amazing achievements where I'd never thought, this book would make it there. So, very proud of those accomplishments. That's
very fascinating. Yeah. Has it been a part of any reading circles or been introduced into school programs now?
Yeah. So the Boston school programs, they're lecturing on it. In the LA ethnic studies class, it's being lectured on for in regards to what's going on now, like the Asian American hate crimes that have been going on, and so the ethnic studies teacher in LA is using this book as a tool to kind of help kids think about anti-bullying. And to connect with the Asian American, demographics.
That's beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit about your book that you brought today, The Day I Woke Up Different, and what were the intentions you had for writing this book?
So The Day I Woke Up Different, it's really a book, even though it's written, the prose is written from the Vietnamese American lens. It's really about waking up one day and realizing you're different from the rest of the world and society, and feeling a little lost. I think a lot of people can really identify with that, right? And so this book was really intended to help people go on that journey of self-discovery in order to find self-love, essentially. The reason why I wrote it was, one, I didn't, growing up, in America, being an Asian male, or just Asian in general, we didn't really see ourselves represented in, stories, media, and books. And so, when I started seeing, more narratives come out from different demographics. I really wanted to see, my story out there. And so my story, meaning like people like me, the Vietnamese, Asian Americans, our story out there. So I wanted to write a story that, and show people that, hey, we really vibe with each other. We really recognize each other. And so, that's essentially why I decided to write The Day I Woke Up Different.
That's really beautiful. So can you recall possibly reading books when you were younger that had Asian Americans in it? Or would you say your book's the first of its kind?
I wouldn't say it's like the first of its kind, but it's in like the early phases of, Asian American representation in, literature, American literature. Growing up, we had books like Calvin and Hobbes. We had, Charlie Brown movies. We had a lot of, we had, read The Great Gatsby of Mice and Men. Like those were our school books. And it came from like, the Western side. I didn't see any Asian stories really out there. I mean, if they were, like, they weren't really accessible, or I didn't resonate to the stories. They're either Chinese stories, Chinese American stories, or they're white stories, black stories. But I didn't really see Southeast Asians, other demographics out there. So yeah.
When would you say that the Asian American literature movement began in the United States?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I'm not exactly sure when it began. Because I know there are some stories out there early on from like Asian American authors, but in terms of gaining steam, I'd say within the last several years, I noticed a lot more. Especially with social media, like pumping out these stories. I mean, we have like authors like Viet Thanh Nguyen, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner. He wrote The Sympathizer, and he now has a second book out. We had Bao Phi, who I'm gonna be speaking alongside at the Win Loop. Bao Phi, I don't know if you know, he's like a Vietnamese American poet who was on like I think Def Poetry like way back in the day, and he won like awards for his poetry. So he's an author. T. Bowie. So, she's like an illustrator, but she also has a book out. So there's like, there are these, authors out there, to name a few. But, I really feel like within the last like several years, that's when we've been noticing them a lot more.
What would you say your favorite book is in the Asian American literature genre?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, that's a really good. Being Vietnamese American, I get excited when I see our stories out there. So, I might sound like a broken record, but yeah, like I think for me, when I read The Sympathizer, even it's not a children's book. It's like a fiction novel based off of, the Vietnamese American experience and like, U.S. imperialism. But I thought Viet Thanh, when he really built this amazing character who like essentially is a spy, he's like, and I don't want to give too much of the book away, but he's a spy, and he kind of navigates between like many different cultures, whether it's, with the communists, with like the South Vietnamese American military, or, in America, right? So it's very dynamic, and I thought it was really incredible how he pulled this character off and humanized him when he's, being a spy, Yeah,
wow.
Very unique.
That sounds like a fascinating read. I'll have to put it on the list.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's getting made into, I think, either a movie or like a TV series. I can't remember. It's being like it's going to be made into some, some form of a, visual, arts.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So back to the book, can you tell us who did the art? I was looking through it, and the art in it is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That The artist is T Dawn. She is actually my cousin, and she is an amazing watercolor painter. And this is actually her first children's book illustration project. And I basically had this idea of this book about 4 or 5 years ago, and I pitched it to her, and she's like, I'm on board. And so we started going, and so we had to learn this process. But yeah, T Dawn Art is her website's tdawnart.com. That's kind of her tag there. But she did an amazing job, and she built this whole palette off of this book. It was a learning process, and it took a lot of work to do. And one of the reasons why we decided on watercolor is because in Vietnamese culture, when we're studying back and looking back to the history, we wanted to see what are the main pieces of art within Vietnamese culture, right? Because the goal of the book was not only to write a story with Vietnamese American characters, but it was also to essentially take our history and our heritage, put it in a modern piece of art where people could resonate with, hold in their hands, and really open and feel the history, the heritage, essentially to carry forward the messages of our ancestors, the art of our ancestors that they they left for us too, to carry forward to the next generation. And so in doing our research, the three big art pieces within the Vietnamese culture was proverbs, right? It's a big proverb culture, stemming from some Confucius proverbs. Proverbs are like poems. That's why it's written in poetry. And also watercolor painting, and so that's one of the big art styles. And so that's essentially why we decided to go with the watercolor. So each scene is actually a physical print. Like she water painted every single illustration. And so what we had to do, the challenge was that we didn't know what we were doing with this book. So we actually had to figure out how to scan these prints in high quality, digitalize it, and then bring it into a digital format in high enough quality so that when we print it out into like a book back into physical form, going from physical to digital to back to physical, it still maintains its integrity. But if you see each painting, T did an amazing job. It's like beautiful. Like it's like 1,000 times more amazing than what this book. And I think the illustration in this book, I'm biased, right? But I think the illustrations are amazing already. But if we ever get to the point where we can have an art gallery, and that was the intent too, was to have an art gallery on this book in the future. But when we get to finally show the world the actual physical paintings, I think everyone is going to be amazed.
Wow, can you show a few of the pictures to the camera?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
absolutely incredible art.
Let's do the Vietnam scene. So this is a pretty awesome one. And so this details the Vietnamese refugee immigrant American journey from Vietnam to Galang, the island where the refugee camps were. Some people went by boat. Some people, got there, flew there. Most people got there by boat. And then from Galang, they flew to America. Some people went to, I think it's Arkansas. I think that was one of the places they went first. Then to Philadelphia, to New York. My parents, they ended up staying out in New York, after they got, their sponsors. So then our family was rooted in the Queens, New York. So that's why there's, that Statue of Liberty. It also represents America too. And then, you see throughout, this kind of flow where you have like, the lotus flower, which is the national flower of Vietnam, right? Beauty from mud. That's what the lotus represents. And it flows into roses, which is the American flower,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. And is this corn?
Yeah. Harvest and corn. Yeah. Corn, because it's, American crop.
The Three Sisters.
Exactly. They're crops of the Americas, which is the corn. Yeah. Glad you picked it up.
Yeah, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Should I share another one? You're going to...
Yeah. Let's share one more.
Yeah. I think let's share this food one, because this is one of my favorite scenes here. It's food, right? Because
best food in the world.
I'm biased, so I like that's my top for foods, right? And so we have the pho, which is what Vietnamese food is most known for, and then you have bánh xèo, which is Vietnamese. Most Vietnamese people, Vietnamese Americans, if you ask them what their favorite food is probably bánh xèo. And then we have bún bò Huế, which is another favorite. It's a spicy soup. And then we have like canh chua, which is like, kind of like, it's like a tamarind soup. It's kind of like Philippines, like they have their sinigang. We have our canh chua. We kind of battle, me and my wife's Filipina. So we'll duke it out, which is better. I like canh chua. She likes sinigang. And then thịt kho, which is, just like caramelized meat. And, that's like a staple, the comfort food of the comfort food for Vietnamese food. Banh mi, which is, everyone loves banh mi, which, if like the history of banh mi, it's basically like, when during the French occupation, people needed to make food for, school kids. And the best way was like, get this like, French bread, stuff it with Vietnamese meats, some, carrots and daikon. They wrap it in like, rubber band and like a little thing, and they had it to go. So like they would pass it out really quickly as food for kids and people to go, and it just became like a Vietnamese staple. And it's like it's very it's like a banh mi is like a good representation of like all the footprints into Vietnam, the different cultures, the different timelines, and it's like a mixture. It's like to me, banh mi is like the perfect example of what this book is all about. Being like learning to accept yourself, and it's like putting all the best parts of the world, whether where it came from, good or bad, just the best of it, everything into a banh mi. So yeah.
And I love the dogs.
Dogs are very American, right? Like the way we treat and care and tend to our canine friends, like so like their family members, and it's like an oddity to a lot of Vietnamese families. Like, oh, why do you treat your dog so good? I have my dog, my miniature dachshund. I carry her everywhere and take her everywhere with me, and like give her like the best foods. And it's a very Western thought, but and so that they represent that piece of the American culture in the book. That's
beautiful. And then the ties with the lotus and the rose, and the banh mi with the the French influences within now modern Vietnamese cuisine.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So can you tell me what experiences or thoughts have guided you into the making of this story? Like what brought you, when did you wake up different?
Yeah, that's a great question. When writing this book, I took a lot of my own personal stories and my experiences and, placed it into this book. Early on, like I grew up in Beaverton, which is like a suburbs 10 minutes outside of Portland, 10 to 20 minutes outside of Portland. And it was before, now people know Portland as Portlandia because of the show. But prior to that, in like the late 80s, early 90s, the neighborhood I grew up in was pretty much a farm town. And it was all fields. You had bunnies, you had you had horses around, you had cows in our backyard even. And, it was, there wasn't that many. In our neighborhood, we had a handful of Vietnamese kids because for some reason on the west side, that's where we were at. Majority of the Vietnamese kids in Portland were on the east side of Portland, deep east. And so I didn't even know that they existed, really. and it was primarily like predominantly white. There are a few black kids, some Koreans, good Latinos, Latinas, good amount of that demographic. And so, we had different cultures around, but it was primarily white. And, being Vietnamese, I was raised in a Buddhist, home as well. And so I'd rock the Buddha chains with the jade pendant. And so, me also having a round face, very slanted Asian eyes, I stood out. And from an early age, walking to school, I remember, I was in kindergarten, and these sixth graders who were way taller than me, they had hoods on, not like Ku Klux Klan hoods, a bit like they had, hoods on, and they're scary, they intimidate me. And I was very small, and, I'd get picked on, I'd get, spit on, I'd get pushed on, and it was every recess that I'd get picked on. And then, having Buddha necklaces, I'd have, the kids, like, these white kids just surround me in a circle, and they would, tell me like go back to where you came from, your God. They'd say like, your God sucks. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, Buddha is not a God. What do they mean? Like, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand that they're being racist or discriminatory. I just thought they're being illogical. It's like, go back to where I came from. I was born here. It doesn't make sense to me. So, so that was my first experience of feeling othered. And, as I kind of kept hearing those things, I kind of slowly learned, it's because I'm different. I don't look like them. I don't, I have like black hair. There's even a piece in the story where it says, they ask me like, what are you? And I heard that all the time growing up. What are you? What are you? They really mean, people really mean like, what ethnicity are you? But people, in Portland back then, they didn't know how to ask that question. Like, what ethnicity are you? Like, where are you from? Like, I'm American. Like, what are you? I'm human. They kept asking me, what are you? What are you? And one day I kind of started understanding what they meant, what these kids meant. And this was on the playground. I can't remember what grade I was. I think it's like either second grade, third grade, something like that, grade school, They kept asking me, what are you? And then I looked, I'm like, okay, there's the tall black kid who's really good at basketball. There's another black kid, there's a lot of white kids. I see, a kid that looks at me, he's Korean, but one kid, I'm like, man, like, what am I like? But, in America, we live in a very black and white world, right? And Asians were, historically have been invisible. And so, even in, media, movies, where either you were emasculated or we're just not even seen. Like, I can't remember the last time, other than Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, there was an Asian American, and Jackie Chan's not even Asian American, right? He's Asian. Bruce Lee is like, Asian American because he's born in San Francisco, but he has kind of journey, right? So like, how many years apart? Like we had like maybe 3 in Jet Li, maybe like examples of Asians in media, right? And so we live in a very black and white world. And so like as a kid, not seeing anyone who looked like me, I was like, what am I? Well, I'm not you, white kid. I'm not you, black kid, but, I have black hair, my skin. I guess I'm half black and half white. And I literally said that, and because like, that's why I thought I was half black and white. Cause it's like, what, as a kid, like, you don't really know any better. I don't know what your parents don't tell you you're Vietnamese American. They tell you our parents only told us to speak Vietnamese. That's all I knew. Nói tiếng Việt, speak Vietnamese, right? And so I didn't know what Asian American was. I didn't know what Vietnamese American was. I just knew there's black people, white people, and there's me and a kid that looks somewhat like me, but is not me. So yeah, those are kind of like my examples of, realizing I'm different.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, what are some of your goals for sharing this story to the world?
Yeah, I think with this story, I want to, show people that our stories are of value, that our experiences being Asian American, Pacific Islander American, are valuable. I want people to, from this story, to learn self-acceptance. Because as an Asian American, I had like major identity issues, as I kind of described earlier, right? And it was really through my journey of self-acceptance that I was able to, find my purposes and my belonging. And I hope through this, this narrative that, people can relate to, our experiences and really, connect with us, humanize us, and also learn something about themselves too. The way this book is written, it's like, it's really, the way it ends, it's really like made to be the start of your journey.
I see. That's really beautiful. What a marvelous creation. So, can you tell me, when did you really identify yourself or see yourself as Asian American? When did that belonging become a part of you?
No, that's a great question. It wasn't until a little later in life, because, going back, I never really felt completely American, right? By American standards. I'm a soft-spoken Asian guy and kind of just, do my thing. And then when I flew back to Vietnam, right, I was like, okay, I see a ton of people who don't really look like me still, right? Because I look lighter than the people in Vietnam. They're very dark-skinned in Vietnam. And so I didn't really feel like there either. I was like, I remember on the plane home, I was in third grade and was flying home, and I remember, thinking to myself, oh man, I'm going to finally go to a place where I feel like my family is, feel like I belong. I get there and I'm like, man, nobody looks like me. And then I experienced some discrimination over there too, where because I'm American, people would try to rip me off, or kids would throw rocks at me because I looked lighter than them. And so I spent all these years trying to navigate being different from every place in the world now, not just in America, but also Vietnam. But it wasn't until, I found, dancing, where I learned how to channel, character, this persona I want to be. And as a breaker, as a b-boy, you gotta be like fresh, you gotta be dope, or else you're gonna get back then, you're gonna get clowned on, really hammered on, if you sucked. And so, I had to really work hard at being decent. And when I competed, you had to go in the cypher and where your spotlight's on you, and you can't fake. Or I mean, I did fake because I, wasn't as confident, but you couldn't show that you were nervous or whatnot, or you get clowned on, right? So I had to pretend to, be confident. I had to pretend to be the person that I wanted to be. And from that, those moments of dance, competing, and articulating myself into my body, I kind of learned self-expression and learned like my own personal value, my intrinsic value. And so, that was probably when, and I started dancing in middle school, breaking in middle school. So I'd say middle school, high school was when I started my journey of self-acceptance. It was really through dance and through art that I really, found my voice and my identity.
So being born in the United States, how were you able to connect to your roots as a Vietnamese American? Growing up, did you feel any connection to your roots, or was it just something that was there? Can you tell me how you were able to connect with them?
Yeah. No, I mean, growing up in a Vietnamese household, I felt different than my family. It's my siblings and my cousin T and Phung Nam, they spoke better Vietnamese. Everyone spoke better Vietnamese than I did in our home. And even though T and Phung Nam, they grew up in a separate home, their mom took care of me a lot. So, their mom essentially is like my second mom. And so, they're kind of essentially like, even though they're my cousins, they're more like my siblings. So me and my sister would go there a lot. So there's like 4 of us that are pretty close knit, but I was the only boy. So I felt, odd already. And the traditions of Vietnamese culture, I didn't really connect with because, our parents don't really, there's a language barrier, right? My parents didn't speak English, like almost no English at all. So I'm like, at 10 years old, I'm already like trying to translate these like legal documents for them, right? So there's that language barrier there. And so they couldn't really articulate and explain things to me. So I spent a lot of years like, not liking Vietnamese culture, at times even hating Vietnamese culture because of, I only felt the bad parts, even though I may have experienced both the good and bad. I only felt the bad parts of it. And so learning to navigate that, I think it wasn't until I got older, I started, finding more, self-love, self-acceptance. And, that helped me to kind of like dodge the negative parts of the culture to find the more beautiful parts. Going back to Vietnam pretty frequently was really helpful. I started going in 3rd grade, and every 2 years I'd go back to visit my grandparents, right? And it was really my grandparents that, and my aunt, I'd say I give her big credit for like, installing, the pieces of culture that I love, like, cause I built a connection to them. Like my grandpa sitting on the curb with my, old grandpa, having him tell me stories from the Vietnamese perspective of what happened even during the war and what went on with their family. And, learning my heritage, learning my history of, my ancestors, that's when I felt more connected to, the culture. Because, it kind of gave me like a sense of root. Going back to Vietnam, building connection to my aunt, my elders, my grandparents, that was a big part. And food too. Food was a huge, piece of me being proud of my culture because, Vietnamese culture, people would love. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but like, people would always come, like, I'd always go to like places and non-Vietnamese people, mainly non-Asian people, would come to me and like, know I'm Vietnamese. And like, yo, they won't say yo, but they're like, hey, you're Vietnamese? I love pho. I love pho. That's it, pho, right? And like, yeah, it's like, okay, it's a weird way to like, try to build connection, but I get it, right? I get they're trying to find a connection with me, right? Because we look different. They might not know much about me yet, right? So they're trying to build rapport by saying the one thing they know is like the food, pho, right? Pho. And so the food always like, and I love Vietnamese food. I've always loved Vietnamese food. That was always a constant. And so as I got older, I started loving Vietnamese food even more. And so that, naturally helped me even build my love for my Vietnamese, heritage even more. Elders and food, I'd say, in a nutshell.
I love it. Yeah, food is the glue of culture in a way. It brings everyone together.
Right.
So to the other Vietnamese Americans out there, what would you recommend for them? If you were once in their position, what would you recommend for them to connect back to their roots?
That's a really good, I'd say there's different ways to go about it, right? I mean, some people have the opportunity to know about their family. And, so if you do have that opportunity to learn more about your family's history, I'd say start there because the family history, everybody, no matter you're Vietnamese, you're African, you're Irish, you're, whatever, like no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, everybody, has a very amazing family history, whether it gets cut off somewhere, whether it's like not something you may want to hear, but it's a part of the whole picture, right? And I think, going back a lot of times building connection with your ancestors. You know, even if it's direct ancestors or even if it's not direct ancestors, I think that really helps to build self-pride, self-love, self-acceptance, right? Because you've learned a foundation of yourself, right? And then along the way, you'll find something amazing. I'm sure of it. So I think that's one way, you know. Another way is just like, you know, visiting like, you know, like, you know, wherever you're from, like, you know, wherever your heritage is from, like visiting that area, learning its history and like what the cool things about it are that stand out, that you resonate with, right? Like, you know, I don't resonate with everything in Vietnamese culture, but there's a lot of Vietnamese things in Vietnamese history that I really do resonate with, and it makes me proud. Like, it's like, oh, there is a space in history that I belong to and that I resonate with, that I vibe with. And so that building that connection. So really, I mean, finding multiple pathways to build connection. I mean, food's always a good way, like we've been talking about, right? Like Vietnamese food's amazing. So yeah, I think, you know, finding ways to build connection. And I think for me, Vietnamese culture, you know, is really big on elders and ancestors and food. So I think those are good ways to start.
I like it. I like that list. So for non-Vietnamese people, what's your favorite non-pho dish that you would recommend for us to try?
That's a good one. Ooh, that's a very good question. So, I mean, everyone knows banh mi. So that's kind of like, you know, that's always a recommendation, but something, you know, I'd say bánh xèo. Bánh xèo is like always a winner. It's like the Vietnamese crepe. You know, and different parts of Vietnam may eat it and make it somewhat different, but the fundamentals of it is pretty, you know, it's similar. It's like, you know, mung bean mixture batter that they do in a crepe, and they put like, you know, bean sprouts and pork sometimes, or, you know, shrimp, or they can do it without, if you're vegan, you can do it without that stuff too. I think bánh xèo is a winner, always a winner in my book.
And is it something that you could get at almost every Vietnamese restaurant, you'd say?
No, actually, it's...
Where can I go?
Yeah. I mean, if you're ever in Alameda, I think there's, you know, places like Side Street Pho. You know, there's restaurants that do have bánh xèo. But to get it authentic, you got to go to, you know, the... Mama's Kitchen, like Viet Auntie, like, yeah, you just got to go to Viet Auntie. You know, there's no restaurant that can compare. So, you know, you got to get at home. Yeah.
So, with everything you've been telling me about living as a Vietnamese American in the United States, how would you say you balance your life living between two cultures?
Yeah, you know, when I was younger, I think I had a lot of trouble with balancing the culture because, you know, times were different. I didn't feel like things would be as accepted as they are now. And so I had a code switch a lot, you know, like in this, you know, trifecta of world, you know, whether it's Black culture, white culture, Asian culture, Vietnamese culture, you know, I had to learn to code switch quite a bit. But I'd say nowadays, you know, it's like we're in a space where we can be authentic with ourselves, and I can now wear myself, my full self, on my sleeve. So I can wear my Vietnamese parts, you know, on my sleeve. I can, you know, I can speak out in the open in Vietnamese without, you know, here in the Bay Area without, you know, being told like, you know, English only, man, you know. So nowadays, like, you know, I don't really have to balance too much. I can just be myself and be all the parts of myself, and it's more accepting, which is really nice.
Has this been a moment you've looked long forward to?
I don't know if I ever looked for it because I didn't know it existed, to be honest. But when I moved to California, you know, and living in areas where there's more people like me, and when I say people like me, more like Vietnamese Americans who felt the same ways I did, it was nice. It was nice. And just being able to be myself, even at, you know, having people find value to me speaking Vietnamese and, understanding Vietnamese like culture and cultural context, even when I'm on the hospitals, that's really cool. I think to me that's been really, really dope to be able to to live.
How often would you say you speak Vietnamese?
I mean, like full sentences, or we'll say stuff like bad words to each other. Like all my friends know all the cuss words because I say them all the time. And it's like not like I don't even cuss that much in English, but for some reason, like cussing in Vietnamese, it just reminds me of my Viet uncles, right? And so, I kind of, throw out like a "no man," like, just in honor of my Viet uncles. And, our friends, our group of friends, we just go. So, I mean, I speak it pretty much every day. My wife knows all these words too. But in terms of full sentences, it's probably at least once a week, because I talk to my parents and my aunt, and whenever I speak with Vietnamese patients.
I like that. So, since you're a new father, and congratulations, thanks, by the way, are you starting to speak Vietnamese with your own child?
Yeah, I try to, and my wife, she's a Filipina, and she has she's from the Visayans, so her dad speaks Visayan, Visayan, sorry, and then her mom, they all speak Tagalog as well, and so we're trying to teach them all those, plus Vietnamese, plus English, and throw in some Spanish, and I'll count to Japanese because I took Japanese for 3 years, and so we're going to try to teach our son all the languages, not just Vietnamese or English, and English, all of them.
That's good. We got to spread more language acquisition in the United States with our youth.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, for me, my experience is working in the hospital, right? Like, there are times where, even just speaking one word in someone's native language, like just the effort, right? It meant so much to them, especially at someone's most vulnerable spot. And, that taught me connection. Right? To be able to connect with so many different people from all walks of life is an amazing experience. And so, yeah, we absolutely got to bring in more languages in this society.
Yeah, language is a network.
Absolutely. Yeah, the more you can communicate to, the more, you can build bridges with.
Absolutely. So, have you read your story to your baby yet?
Absolutely, yeah.
How many times?
I read a couple of times. I mean, he's still he's 7 months old, so he's kind of like how can I eat this book? But yeah, no, I read it a couple of times. Yeah.
Are there any pictures within the book that he's gravitated the most towards?
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't really noticed that. He just tries to chew at everything. So
Aww.
Yeah. So maybe one day though, because the character, I think as he gets older, he may see himself in it. Because he looks similar to me. And he has my wife's features as well, but structurally, head shape wise, and hands and all that looks similar to me. And he has the monolid like me, so he may see himself one of these days.
I bet you're very excited to share this book with him, especially when he starts learning how to read. Yeah,
I think my hope is, that he'll see Dad's name, Ba's name, right? He'll see Ba's name on this book, and whether he values it early on, I hope, if not, 10 years, 20 years, when he's older and he's, more of a full person, he'll understand, the gravity of this book. And so, yeah, hopefully, but who knows? He can just be like, yeah, it's Dad, it's Ba. Yeah.
So I know that you started your own publishing company, Fourth World Press. Was this book the reason why you created it? Can you tell a bit why you created this company?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So, essentially this book is, self-published by me, but through a publishing company, which is Fourth World Press. Essentially, when we created this project, we understood the value of this project, and we understood of what role it can play for people And so we wanted to build streamlines for, future stories, to continue it, to build on it. We didn't want this just be a one and done thing. We wanted to be able to tell more stories that we have, and to eventually expand to our communities and to help them tell their stories. Obviously, it's a long journey ahead because we're just starting out, and at this point we don't have like the big resources, but we're building the roadmap there to be able to help people tell their stories that where they felt that their voices haven't been heard of. So that's the main goal.
So what's the reason why you chose the word fourth world?
I mean, again, I'm probably biased, and I probably sound like I'm like, just patting myself on the back all the time, but Fourth World Press to me has a very deep meaning, right? If we were to look at GDP, right? First world, second world, third world, right? First world being like something like a place like America, where they have like a lot of gross, yearly gross of resources. And then second world now is like, more like, Vietnam's climb up there. It used to be third world. And the third world country where Vietnam used to be, where they're very poor countries that don't make a lot of annual profits grossly for the country. And so when you look up the term fourth world, that goes even deeper, where it's, they almost have no GDP, right? And they're seen as being poor, but really, if you look really deeply in that, it's like that. That fourth world is basically they don't rely on governments. They don't rely on these financial incentives and monetary to base off their society. They're hunter and gatherers, essentially tribes. The fourth world, where they are self-reliant. And so we, wanted to embody that self-reliance-ness. Like that's what we are. This is an independent publishing company, right? And so we're relying on ourselves, to distribute this, and then we rely on ourselves to, help, sustain ourselves. So that's why, where fourth world stem from. And also the other part of it is that, we want to write stories of compassion, right? Like stories of like positivity, of love. And so, when you look up, fourth chakra, right? The fourth chakra is the heart chakra. And, it embodies compassion, love. And so that's also like a part of that too. The fourth world, living within your fourth world, like, the heart chakra. So independence, living within your heart chakra, the characteristics of that. And, press is, I thought it was just more fitting than publication because we're a small entity. So Fourth World Press, that's essentially what it means.
I like it. I like it a lot. So is there any hints or any future publications that you're going to publish soon? Yeah,
I am. We definitely want to do a second book eventually. Right now we're still in like, this book tour phase of this book. It's almost kind of like, when you have an album, where you go on tour and you're doing shows and, it's kind of like that. So we're kind of in that phase for this book. But, we do want to write a different story. I do have a lot of good ideas that I've been kind of throwing back and forth. But in the meantime, we have things from, Filipino, like literacy, from historical Filipino, like that we're going to publish for free because they're in the public domain, but we want to bring them, from the Philippines over to America and have them accessible. We're not going to make a dime off of it because that's not the goal. The goal is like access and to translate and to bring it forward and to, so that's one of our projects right now. We're going to be starting a food blog soon where we have like a lot of guest bloggers from our community. Fourth World Village. Fourth World Village, people from our community, do a blog spot on like, their ethnic foods. I think, Phung Nam, who's, she did the piano composition to the background music of this book. It's a 3-piece art piece of, and so she did the piano piece that hopefully we'll get to the audiobook soon as well too, that we've already recorded it. We just kind of have to like polish it up, and, recording in COVID kind of like put a huge pause on that. But she's also a baker, Fung Nam and so she'll do like a guest blog spots on there too. My sister will, my wife will, so they'll do like fun stuff like that too. So we'll have like those little publications out. As we're getting more reception of this book, I think we're building more ideas for the second story, and I think it's going to be a good one. I'm really excited about starting on that one eventually too.
I love it. I can't wait to hear more about it and read it. So I have another question. Mm-hmm. Why a children's book of all things?
I spent, 6 years, and before that 3 years, working in the adult world in healthcare. And, I've been at people's most vulnerable spots, at the end of their journey. And, when you're an ICU nurse at the bedside and you're hearing these impactful and powerful, vulnerable stories, you get all these lessons, and I always feel like, for me, I always treat my patients, the way I would treat my family members, right? Like I care for them because I don't want to cause harm, all that. But in doing so though, that I've been able to hear these amazing stories from people at the very end of their life. And I wanted to take these lessons, these messages, and bring them to people as early as possible. Because I always feel that the sooner we can get people on their journeys to self-acceptance, self-love, and to help them build their intrinsic value for themselves, I think the better the world will be, right? And so, when I set out to write this children's book, I wrote it for children, but also for adults. And that's kind of like the style that we do at Fourth Word Press, at least for the projects that I'm involved with, right? So I want it to be able to have someone super young, enjoy this book, and as they go through the process, keep revisiting this book and grow with it and find more Easter eggs within it and find more connection and growth from this book, right? So I wanted to start early, but I also wanted to help guide along the way as well. So, I felt children's books the easiest way, because if a young kid, 7-year-old can read it, anybody can read it pretty much.
Yes, and the children are our future.
They are, and hopefully, we can give them the keys to, open the doors and be better people than we are, That's the goal, right?
That's the goal, and to read it with their family together. Absolutely. I see. That's absolutely beautiful. I have another question. Would you say that, while writing this, do you feel connected more to Vietnamese culture now or to American? Where are you on that timeline?
Yeah, I'd say I'm connected to, I'm connected to both now. I think in writing this, I realized how intertwined and how to live with both worlds, the best of all worlds.
That is very beautiful.
Thanks.
In your own words, how would you define what it is to be an American, and what is American culture?
Yeah, for me, American culture, and I mean, I'm sure you ask many people, you get many different answers, right? But for me, American culture means opportunity, right? Means being, having the freedom for being creative, to have, your freedoms essentially, and your opportunities. And I think that's what's amazing about American culture is for better or for worse, people are unapologetic about, who they are here. In the Vietnamese culture, it's very, you have the elders that you really respect. So you kind of gotta, peel back a little bit. Whereas American culture is it's about, individualisticness. in the creative world to be really being creative. And so I really love those pieces. And to me, that's what, being America is about, is like, opportunity, creativity, individualism. And so I love those pieces about America.
Me too. What are some of the things that you hope that anyone who reads The Day I Woke Up Different would walk away with?
As I said earlier, this book is, the way it ends, it's really the start of your journey, right? The ending kind of is like, it's not like an abrupt ending. It's kind of like, all right, here you go. Now, now it's your turn to reflect and talk about your story. So I think my hope is that, anyone who reads the story, well, wherever they're at in their journey of self-acceptance, whether they're just starting that journey of self-acceptance or they have been on that journey, is to, start it or to reflect back at how far they've come and to be proud of themselves. And that's what I hope they walk away with, the day I woke up different.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful chatting with you today. For the future, how are you able to find your books? Do you have any links or anything you'd like to share with us and how we could find more of your work?
Yeah, you can go to www.fourthworldpress.com. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter even. We have like link trees to all our websites, all our projects. So those, you can find that book there. You can, it's now physical copies are now at Win Luke Museum in Seattle. And then, you can find them in some libraries like the Multnomah County Public Library in Portland, Oregon. So, the best place is fourthworldpress.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you today.
My pleasure. My honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.